Hello and welcome to the Responsibility We Carry Athletic Support Service Learning Series. I am your co-host, Travis Ballard, and I currently serve as the N4A ECC Institutional Partnership Program Chair. And our other co-hosts are Mr. Quadro Steele, who serves as our co-chair for the ECC IPP Committee, and Ms. Lucy Mason, who serves as our ECC IPP Learning Series Director and Editor. Today, we bring you part one of our learning series on fatherhood, and we have a transcendent leader, a catalyst in the intercollegiate athletic industry, and more importantly, an incredible father and a humanitarian, someone I call a dear friend, a supporter in my life, Mr. Aaron Tillman, Assistant Director of Student Athlete Development at Florida State University. Mr. Tillman, thank you for coming on.
Man, appreciate y'all having me. That introduction, y'all gonna have me in tears. I might have to get a tissue box here in a second. With that, man, I appreciate you guys having me for this conversation.
So we know we compete, and Travis has definitely been working on his structure. So, I have to go in the crates and not only is he a transcendent practitioner, we are talking an award-winning documentarian while he was in college. Won an award for The Need to Belong.
Yeah.
Which I watched the trailer for. The man has choir music in it, not like the horror movies. Choir, and then also an author. You can still get his book now out. Finding Christ in College. This man is one of 2 FSU practitioners to receive the N4A Excellence Award. I told you I did my research, trying to keep winning. And also won the Best in State Award for advisors in Florida. What else doesn't he do? I bet fatherhood probably tops all of those jobs. So we'll get right into it. But an amazing person we got on the line with us today.
Man, appreciate y'all words. Just encouraged the different experiences in the various communities that I've been blessed to be a part of. And this is just another in that.
We're going to jump right into the tough questions for you, right? There always seems to be some type of debate around what it means to be a present father. We want to know, how do you define being a present father? And do you find that the demands of your job make it difficult for you to meet the standards that you set for yourself?
Man, this question, I don't even know where to start, to be honest with this question, Lucy. Like this is a deep question. What is presence? What is presence? I think presence can often be mistaken as like uninterrupted time. And we see presence as I have to fully be in whatever I'm doing at that moment and at that time. But what I've noticed with fatherhood is that presence is being available when you can. Being available absolutely just when you can. It doesn't mean that I am 100% available in that moment and I'm not going to get interrupted by anything else, by life. Like my wife might not be calling me to do something, or I got to go outside and take care of something at the house while I'm looking, or hanging out with my son. Presence is being able to be available, with whoever you are at that time. And it doesn't mean that it won't be interrupted. I think that with presence, and then, I know we'll get further into it, is this reality of balance, and we look into this thing of, if we're present, that means that we're not present elsewhere. And I think about my father in this question, because my dad and my mom were split. They split up probably when I was about 7 years old. And my sisters and I, we would go back and forth between my mom's house and my dad, wherever he was staying. He had a lot of challenges just with housing and whatnot growing up, but he tried to be as present as he could, and his presence was, I'm going to get my kids ice cream. It was like, I remember it like yesterday, probably like every Thursday he'd take us out to get ice cream. Now we got older, and it got to a stage where it's like, Dad, that ice cream is getting a little bit old. But in his mind, that was a thing of him being able to find a sense of presence with his children. So I value that, and I see that today now, because I often think that I have to be present in a sense of not being interrupted by anything else. And that ain't true. Like, if you look at life comes with interruptions, and you just have to roll with it. Nothing is going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be the way that it needs to be. You just have to learn to be present and making yourself available at that time. And if you're not available as much as you thought you were going to be, that's okay too. People shouldn't get offended if there are other priorities that you have to take care of. And I think this aspect of work balance and having supervisors and having folks that care for you, especially in my role now, being a father and also working in student athlete development. I love the support that I have in this specific department, especially from my supervisor, to be able to be present with my family and that understanding where if something happens, if something is going on, if it's my son's birthday or if my wife wants to go out of town, I can feel confident and okay with just bringing that up to my supervisor or within our department without having to feel hushed or feel like, oh no, well, our priority is this event or whatever it may be. That space to be able to be with your family is provided. And I don't think that that is often provided, especially within our profession, because we are seen as those that are always in the hustle and bustle, those that are always on the go. So it's almost like our norm that we have to be busy. So we get caught in this vortex of busyness and forget that, our presence is just the availability that we can at that moment.
I actually have a follow-up, and when we talk about fathers, and we've had a whole motherhood series, we sometimes identify with fathers being not present as almost either it's a reality or something accepted. And how do you think that's a fair kind of assessment, or do you notice that people maybe in particularly in the career aspect are like, well, yeah, you don't need to be there because the mom is there, like that's your role, is to not be present. And then how do you kind of buck against that, or do you think that there are more people or more fathers out there who are saying, I really want to be present, and I don't like the idea that maybe the perception is that I'm either not supposed to be or just in reality not going to be there?
I think about gender roles in this instance, like sometimes men are seen as not present just because children often, especially in their younger age, will lean toward the mother for a lot of the initial support that's needed. Considering the mother has carried the child for so long, if the mother is pregnant in this instance, or however they conceive. I think that it is the men are often seen as lazy, especially like it just that, or incapable, if you will. You were talking about there's this lack or this societal thought of like, man, fathers are not present, and especially like Black fathers. Let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about the statistics that exist for Black fathers where, statistically, they say that almost 57% of Black males are not present in their home. So that just is a bad statistic. But you look at what like drives those statistics, right? And you already look at like marginalization that exists for Black people in general, where we don't have the access to certain things that we normally do. So those statistics are not surprising. They're just a reality that, man, where things are still not the way that we hope that they could be. I say all that to say is like that plays into this narrative where the mother is often seen as taking on all of the responsibility, where the male is seen as like careless or lazy or lackadaisical or doesn't care about his family and he's just out doing what he's doing. There's so many narratives that you can take, but it comes back to this thing called like the deficit lens. So Black males in general, even fathers, are seen with this deficit view as though they're not able to support. The only thing that they can do is bring bread home for the family, and they don't do anything else but sit on the couch and watch TV and let mothers just do what mothers are supposed to do. But I mean, that's a false view as well too. I think it comes back to this aspect too of like, just presence. Like, how can you be present for your partner in showing up with your child? Specifically, I give you an example. So my wife at home, she loves to work out. She goes to work out on certain days, and I want to make sure that as her husband and also as the father of our child, I want to give her that time and that space to be able to be. At the same time, we give each other space to be able to be freed up to do things, because we want to be able to continue to foster our marriage and foster that love and also foster love for our child. So giving her the space to be able to do the things that she needs to do is me being able to be present. It's me being able to show, active participation in parenthood, and not just being lazy. And I think it's so much bigger than just the initial provisions. You take a look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of those is, of course, safety. And then, you look at food, and then, do you have a roof over your head? Do you got something to eat? But bigger than that, I think what is often excluded is that reality that, man, like your spouse or your partner, whoever it may be, also has needs. And that can be being present, just allowing them to have that space. So that's a long way to say this narrative that, fathers are viewed as absent, fathers are viewed as not there is not necessarily true. I think if you were to sit in someone's home and see what happens each and every day, minds would probably change to see how active and present fathers really are.
I know me and you've talked about this in particular, and Brother Quadjo has also talked about this. We often talk about the stigmatization around fatherhood. And you mentioned particularly around Black fatherhood, but we rarely talk about the positive aspects of fatherhood. Really wanted to get your experiences of how has fatherhood positively impacted your job and professional identity and career?
Tremendously, man. Like, just being a father has changed my entire perspective. I can distinctly remember, growing up as a kid and being with my dad and going with him places and doing just about everything. My dad cleaned floors. So he would work in different organizations and businesses and do like floor waxing and stuff like that. And I think about my son today, that he is modeling and emulating every single action and every single thing that my wife and I are doing. And man, kids are smart. Like, they're smart. They will do just about anything that you do. You say something, you are watching something, you pick up the phone, like he's picking up his toy. I got a mouse in my hand. He's like, hello, like he's talking when I'm talking. He's just so incredible, man. And it's impacted me in a tremendous way when it comes to my work. Thankfully the daycare that he's at is right on campus, so I can go over and see him. But it's changed my perspective on life. It's really helped me to see my students in a different way. I already saw them as the priority, but I think the value that I attribute to them has become greater in becoming a father, because I realize the value of a life, and I realize the value of someone growing up, that, man, this child that I'm looking at, my son, will not be this young all the time, that he's going to grow up and become an adult, and step into his meaningful work, whatever that may be. So if anything, it has enhanced the calling that I feel like I have to be able to reach our student athletes and just students at the collegiate level. It's made me more patient, and that patience doesn't often come easy. But the reality of when you have a child, man, it just rocks your whole world. You just feel like your brain is about to blow up most of the time, and you feel like you don't know your left from right, can't remember what day it is. And that the patience of having a child and incorporating that into your work world, I think that it's increased my patience a lot. It's really helped me to see people differently, because often we see people as ourselves. We don't see them as they are, so we have the expectations for ourselves that we have for other people, when really we should see them as they are, that we can't control them. We can't put things in a certain situation where it's going to be particularly a perfect environment, if you will, for them, but we have to allow them to fill up the space and allow them to create their meaning in the environment that we all exist in. So I think that it's changed a lot of my perspective in that regard.
And following up on that, are there any surprising issues that you've come across in your career now that you are a working father?
I think people see me as incapable sometimes. They're like, man, this dude is a dad. He's incapable. Like, his time is limited. He ain't got no time to be doing this. So I need to ask somebody else, because we don't know if he's going to be able to do the job. And I think that that's one thing that is attributed with fatherhood, is this deficiency. Like, because you're a father, you can't do certain things, or because, your time is limited, if you will, you're unable. So I think it kind of plays into that narrative that we were talking about earlier, Lucy, of just deficiency. And the thing is like, just because I'm not available, it doesn't mean that I can't do it. It just means that my time is put elsewhere. They're like, oh man, this dude's not available. He must not be able to do it. I'm on to the next. But the reality of it is like, your priorities are elsewhere, and there was this thought about like just balance in fatherhood, and this thought of just balance in general in life. And I think that as people, when people are expecting certain things from you, there's no such thing really as balance. There's just this aspect of managing tension, and you have to learn to manage tension well. And as you learn to manage tension well in parenthood and every other aspect of life, you will realize that, man, I'm not being balanced. I am just prioritizing what is needed. So my friend says it best. He says, man, we don't take time, we just make time. So what are you making your time for? You know, and if we can make time for the things that are important to us, then we will be able to manage that tension in our life well. And it's just all, that's all it is, just a lot of tension. So I think I think people assume that. They think, man, like, oh, this dude is a dad, he sucks. Like, we already know he ain't gonna be there. We're gonna invite him to the event, but he probably ain't gonna show up because it's probably his night to be with his son or whatever it may be. And sometimes it's like that reality of sometimes people view you as just you're not going to be able to do it. And I think I've wrestled with that sometimes, Lucy, in this profession, that they just automatically don't invite you to certain things, or they just automatically assume that, you know, you're not going to be able to go, which is bad, you know, because we shouldn't assume like what someone else's life based on like what we see or what we think we know. But I often run into that a lot.
I want to make you feel like you're definitely not alone. I think I've heard on many occasions after you build the pattern that you're going to be with your kids, that people will say that first. So they'll be like, yeah, we're going to do this, but I know you got the boys. And
Yep.
something else I've heard, which leads into my next question, is, yeah, you could have gone farther in your career, but you're a great dad, right? So there's almost a trade-off of being a great dad and a great or high up administrator, knowing how competitive the job market is in general, right? But when you talk about sports and college sports and the amount of hours that can be required and flexibility and weekends and all the things that come with it, how have you managed that competitive environment with the role of being a father? And maybe positively, how have you kept going and saying, you know, I want to be an administrator, I want to be an associate AD? How have you managed all those things, that competitive environment with being a father?
Yeah, man, it would be impossible without the community. Like, you have to have a community, you know, you have to have a village of people that are surrounded within your family that support you and support what you're doing. Man, hats off to my wife. You know, I'm gonna keep praising her name as we're on here, because I would not be able to do half of the things on here, you know, not only being an administrator, but also being a student, you know, and finishing up in school as well, too. Just all the things that I've taken under this year. My wife, my mother, she stayed a year with us after my son was born. Like, she lived in our house for a year. And she was working on Friday through Sundays back in, she's in Jacksonville. And then she would drive down pretty much every Monday morning to be with our son while we were at work until he started daycare. And that was just by her choice. But man, like, just that allowed us to be freed up to do certain things, you know. In student athlete development, a lot of our events are in the evening, you know, so if it's my night to be with AJ, our son, you know, to put him to sleep, get him ready for bed, do a night routine, get him fed and everything like that, you know, we have a community. Or my wife might be like, you know what, I know I was supposed to do this, but I'll take him tonight so that you can go do your event. So it gets challenging sometimes, because I think the thing that also isn't talked about in the work, the demands of work and a role, is also the health of the relationship of you and your partner, or you and your marriage, and how that is impacted by the demands of work, you know. So this reality of I got to go do something, or I'm supposed to be somewhere, and, you know, this responsibility that is being taken now in your place, where it may be your night, you know, to take or be with your child, and your partner or spouse is like, nah, I'll get them for you, but it impacts you, you know. So that's another thing where I'm trying to be so cognizant of that, man, my wife is with my son. I need to give her some space to be able to do, because she's given me a lot of space to be able to be freed up to do the work that I need to. We also have close friends, you know, like we have neighbors who help out. We have friends who stay like 5 minutes away from us who will be like, man, y'all need a date night. Y'all look rough. Like, y'all looking real rough right now. Y'all need some refreshing, so there are people who will come and watch AJ for us in that regard. But I would say in thinking about too, this reality of being, promotion or working within our field and trying to make space for the things that are important work-wise, but also not neglecting your family is a unique challenge. I think especially in the world of collegiate athletics, because the narrative is to be busy. It's to always be on the run, always be on the go doing something. So it almost says that like there's no time to be a parent. There's no time to actually do these things. Like you're kind of just expected to perform or expected to do well at your work, and your family can come second, in a lot of instances. But it's flipped for me. My family is my priority, and being able to be in a place, thankfully I'm in an environment where family is supported. Family can come. Like I could bring my son to work and he could hang out in my office if he wanted to, if that was the case, or that's what I had to do. I wouldn't get any flack, for him being here, or anyone like chasing me down and say, hey, you can't bring him in here. This is like work rule regulations, like, whatever it may be. It's a very supportive environment in that regard. And I think that, you can't do it alone. I think that there's often this thought of like, I want to create this own tradition or this own aspect of how I'm parenting, but parenthood is beyond you. It's beyond just you and the person that you're with. You actually have a community and a group of people that are helping you to be able to do so and be successful and be healthy as parents. You don't want to come home and just hate each other and just hate your child. Like, oh, he's doing this again. Oh, he's jumping out the couch, or it's funny, man, to be able to see just this reality of community and support and development of the family structure and of your child as well. And how do you put all that together? It's like this puzzle almost, that there are different pieces and you're just trying to figure out how you're going to align everything where you can make it fit. And it changes daily. I think that's the thing as well too, with our work that we do in our field. We never know what's going to come up, like we could say, oh, this event is happening, or this person is here, or we got to be at this place and do an interview or whatever it may be. So always kind of prepared to be on our toes, but to have a community that supports the work that you're doing.
I love that you mentioned community. I know for me, you, Quadjo, and many other father figures in the athletic field have been a motivation for me and helped guided me through my experiences. Do you have father mentors working in the sports field that have helped guided you through parenthood and your professional work identity?
Cannot say that I have like father mentors within collegiate athletics, within our industry. I do have father mentors in general that are in my life that have helped to encourage me, helped to push me, just kept it real. You need somebody you can keep it real with, like we talked about this earlier, someone who you can just take off the mask, and make you feel okay in wherever environment, to not have to feel like you're wearing that, because often we feel like we have to be a certain way to come into the space with the various identities that we bring to a job. But I don't really have any like father mentors in the collegiate athletic space. But I do have mentors in my life who encourage me, who I get to sit with and just talk, and we just chop it up honestly about what's happening, what's going on. They'll ask me real questions like, how are you and your wife doing? Like, how are you treating her? How are you treating your child? Do you get into moments where you get frustrated, and what do you do with that? Are you parenting out of your anxiety? What is driving you as a parent, and how are you intentionally creating the space with your family to develop your family? I think there's also this, and we could get in, this is a whole other subject, but there's an apathy that comes with parenting, and the apathy is that my child is growing and developing, and I don't actually have to be an active participant in my parents' development. They can just go ahead and just do what they do, and everybody else can take care of them, as long as they're eating and as long as they're safe and everything else every day. But that's the other side. And, this is just information and things that I get from mentors that I'm able to sit with and speak with, and learning that, man, like you have to be able to have other perspectives, and you have to be able to see things from a different lens if you want to be successful as a parent. You can't always just see it from your view and all that to say is I do have mentors, and I do have people in my life who constantly are pouring into me that I meet with, other fathers who have done this, who have children from the ages of, 20, 25 to the youngest is like 3 and 4, like it just ranges. And it's good to be able to have their perspective, because I've only been doing this nearly 2 years, where you have others who have been doing this for years. So being able to learn, being able to listen and hear from others is key, I think, in the aspect of parenthood.
I want to, I guess, acknowledge something you said, and you can just say you agree. You mentioned a lot about the role of spouse, right? And in some of the conversations we've had with our mothers, they talked about co-parenting or being a wife, or it seems like we forget that. Is that an important role that as men and fathers, we got to understand that you're not just a father, but you're also a husband, co-parent, and is it important for us to realize that part of the role as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think realizing that even roles, we talked about roles earlier, but roles are not assigned specifically to what you may be doing as a father or as a parent. Like as a father, it's often seen as just the provider, that you're providing like the resources for the wife to be able to do what she needs to do. But as a man, you got to go pick up them groceries, man. Sometimes you got to go wash the clothes outside. You got to iron the outfits in the morning or whatever it may be. You got to go pick up the child from daycare. You got to prepare dinner, all these things that are often assigned to the woman, or whatever it may, even if you're co-parenting, with the conversations that happened earlier, like, how are y'all creating a schedule to where, like, is it your pickup day? Is it my pickup day? Am I with my child for this day, or am I having them on the weekend? All those things are to be discussed. But Quadro, you bring up a good point, because communication is key. And I think that like healthy communication, especially for our Black families, is something that we are not shown or taught or even like given some sort of structure to be able to do so. So what happens is that we often get into this place where it's just like, oh, well, it's this almost lineage of just divorce, or people that are just not together, and this narrative of just like everything is bad and it's never going to be good that comes. And I think about that reality of just, as co-parents, the communication is just key. And in any aspect, communication is key. But if you're doing it in any other respect, I think learning how to do it and talking in a way that's conducive, where you're not talking at people, but you're talking to show that y'all are cooperative, that y'all are actually, a group doing it together, as opposed to like solo individuals. So I think that is a different challenge, even in being married, it's a challenge, but you have to be able to talk about it and do so. So those are key aspects when it comes to just being a parent.
All right, so we're gonna get you with the rapid fire questions now. What is one thing you think fathers in our industry need to hear more of, and one thing you think they need to hear less of?
Fathers need to be affirmed. They need to be affirmed that they're doing well. There's this compulsion to compare to other people because they look a certain way, or they look like, oh man, like I should be doing this, or they're doing pretty well, I should be in this level, or I should be at this place in life, wherever it may be. But they need to be told that they're doing well. They need to be affirmed and have a space and a group of people that they can reach out to and connect with. They need to be told less, these statistics. Just stop embodying the statistics or fulfilling this negative deficit view. I won't fault them at all for that, because that is what our US, I would say our US Western societal perspective really perpetuate. It needs to be more opportunities and more outlets for fathers to be able to share and to be vulnerable, especially like, and we ain't get into it, but like masculinity, we could go for really far with that. But there's this aspect of you're supposed to be a manly man. And I think that's another part of what they need to be told less of, because this manly man aspect is a manly man who is not vulnerable, a manly man who doesn't show emotions or strength, or a manly man who is not in touch with himself, so they develop this identity that exists that as long as I'm a manly man who is strong and who can, support his family, I'm a real man, or whatever it is. But being a real man is being able to be emotionally available for your family and emotionally available for the community that you've been put into. So that's what they need to be told more of, and less of this masculine identity that's been created in our society.
We always end our episodes with this question. It's become a common theme with all our series. You know, one of the things that we know, there's so many people writing our stories, whether through stereotypes, whether through typecast. And you mentioned earlier the segregation of you being at events because of your fatherhood identity. Would like to know how you are writing your own story and navigating through those experiences.
I want to say this, and this kind of comes back to what we were talking about before. I think that we can't write our own stories if someone else's name is on the pages. And we often look at someone else's experience and their view, and we want that so badly. So we compare ourselves to a point where, you know, we are wanting to live the life that they're living. And I choose to go against the grain. I always try to go, one thing I live by is I proceed forward until apprehended. So I go forward until somebody says stop. And I live that way, you know, that I just continue to move until somebody says you can't go anymore. And I water my own grass, man. People say that the grass is greener on the other side, and it's only that way because you're not watering your own. And I try to really tell my story in a sense where I am being vulnerable, where people are getting the real aspect of who I am. And I do it a lot through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a place where I really feel like I can share my experiences authentically and come fully as myself, that I don't have to be performative in my approach. I don't have to be, you know, any sort of way, you know, I don't have to compare myself to what other people are doing, but I really try to share what's happening. And I'm not afraid to put like pictures of my family on there, or, you know, so and so forth, because often this professionalism that exists is absent of personal aspects, which is family. Like, I have to be so professional that I can't show pictures of my family, or I have to be so whatever that, you know, I can't talk about my experiences as a husband or my experiences as a father. So I try to write my story in that sort of way. I write my story by connecting through opportunities like this. Like, I'm quick to pick up the phone and FaceTime somebody or call somebody, man, and just see how they're doing and check in on them. And you know, in that regard, just really just make sure people are doing okay, who, you know, that are in my space and that I value. So I think my story is constantly being written with intentionality.
What's a responsibility you carry that you would not give up?
Man, whew. This is a tough one, Quadro. I think I won't give up my values. I carry my values, and I'm responsible for them. You know, my no is not a personal attack to anyone. It just means that I prioritize other things. And if people aren't okay with that, then so be it. But I won't give up my values. And I carry those values, and my value is family. That's always going to come first. Although I love my work as well too. And my other values, you know, to my work, and my work is serving and assisting student athletes, you know, as best as I can, and providing opportunities for them. So I have to make sure though that I keep those in order, you know, and I make sure that, man, I'm keeping family at the top of it. And that's something that I won't give up. That responsibility as a father, that responsibility as a husband, you know, as a parent, but also in my work. The responsibility that I have to my student athletes.
Aaron, I'm telling you, I'm so excited. We got so many quotes and things that we've been jumping off. I mean, water my own grass. Man, but thank you so much, brother.
Appreciate y'all, man.
Thank you for your insight. We knew you would be an awesome guest, and you didn't disappoint. Before we end the session, we certainly want to acknowledge our ECC subcommittees that have supported this initiative. Our ECC chair, Brother Ramon Cooper, for his support, and one of our previous interviewees who was on our motherhood series, Ms. Shanika Mungeon, who currently serves as our N4A board member, and Ms. Jackie Nicholson, who has been a great supporter and who is also serving as our N4A president for the 2022-2023 academic year. Thank you, everybody. And until next time, take care.